I've noticed a lot of similarities, not just what's happening in the United States, but what's happening across the pond in the UK as well. I think it's happened in France. So there's an open border here in the United States that everyone pretty much acknowledges now. Not only is there an open border, but we've covered stories where the administration, Joe Biden's administration, is flying in plane full of illegal immigrants, and they call them undocumented. And then they will go to these cities and they'll give them credit cards for $1,000 a month to go live. Whereas we have homeless people under every bridge in every major city in this country, and they won't take care of them, but they can't wait to get the country flooded with immigrants. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas on why that's happening, but it's definitely happening, and it's definitely a policy. And one for sure reason is to suppress the wages of workers. There's no doubt that's that. Another reason in the United States is because people aren't joining the military anymore, and so they're promising them citizenship if they join the military. So that's too. That, by the way, that's the way Rome fell. But so is it similar in the UK? Is there's this flood of immigrants and people don't know why?
It's on a different scale, and it's happening in a different way. I mean, the fact that you've got, the Darien Gap shortly won't be a gap anymore. They're building a bridge there to complete the connection from Southern America through to, the USA, and the way in which all the NGOs and the United Nations, and they're all set up to move people en masse from south to north. So clearly there's a deliberate policy of moving people every which way. What's happening in the United Kingdom is that we've got the English Channel that had always been celebrated as a kind of a castle moat that kept out Napoleon and it kept out Hitler and everybody else, and now it's just a free for all, and the little boats come every day when the weather's good, and they're picked up by the Royal National Lifeboat Institution and by Border Patrol, and they're brought into the southern ports, and then they're distributed out into the wider terrain, and they're given help, and they're given money, and they're given accommodation, and they're put up in hotels, and so on and so on. So it's analogous. It's not exactly the same, and also, it's the population of Britain has been more altered, I think, in the last 20 years demographically than is comparable with any other country on earth. It's a massive demographic change has happened. The altering of Britain demographically is not paralleled, I don't think, anywhere else. Why that's happening? Because, if there was any intention to stop that flow of people, you would stop it tomorrow. You just stop it. It would be easily done, because that waterway has been being patrolled by the Navy and by others, for generations, for hundreds of years, and suddenly it's a free for all. Suddenly it's impossible. So clearly, the reason that the small boats and the mass migration is happening is because it's supposed to happen. It's not being stopped because no one wants to stop it. But again, and then you've got to say to yourself, these people that are on the move are also coming from places elsewhere in the world that have been so messed up by the likes of us, by the West, by these policies of the West, of NATO and the rest, destabilizing, bombing the bejesus out of these places until they're rendered into rubble. And then obviously people are on the move. And so there's a lot of anger targeted towards the incomers. And you think, well, fair enough, because people are worried about their communities being utterly changed. They're worried about, the arrival of different heritage, different culture, different religion. You can understand the tensions that ensue. But the people that are arriving are pawns as well. They've had their reality messed up as well, and they're on the move. So, the message that you kind of want to get out there, or the thing you want to get out, is everyone should link elbows left and right with everyone that's standing either side of them, because the problem's above us. It's them up there, that centralizing force that's taking the piss out of us, and punching down on us and everyone, black, white and brown, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and all of the rest of it. We should all just be setting aside our the internecine squabbles for 5 minutes and realizing where the real trouble is. And it's because we're being messed with, one and all.
Yeah,
And, and rather than fighting with one another.
Go ahead.
No, that's that. I mean, it's the extent. That's another aspect of the way in which we're being messed with and played with. Group is being set against group. Creed is being set against creed. Color is being set against color. We've got all of that going on in Britain at the moment. You think, well, wait a minute. Yes, there are tensions, and yes, there are all sorts of problems that ensue when you mix, people that don't really want to be together, and there's a pretense at integration, which is never going to happen. Yes, these are all absolute problems that are massive in people's lives. But you've got to pull back a bit and go, but who's doing this? Why is it suddenly the case that we can't man a border? Why can we suddenly not control the comings and goings of people into the country, which was done effectively for hundreds of years, and now all of a sudden they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. They're coming and they're here to stay.
Yeah, I mean the policies of just here in the Western Hemisphere, how we sanction and overthrow democracies. We do that in the Middle East. We did it in Iraq, displaced 1 million people. Look what we did to Libya. We turned it, when the most successful country in Africa, turned it into a failed state with open slave markets and people fleeing there. So that is, again, and what NATO's doing throughout throughout Africa and the Middle East. We're just, and look, with 20 years in Afghanistan, look what we did to Syria. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And so again, it's not to demonize the immigrants, but it's to demonize the people who are creating the conditions that create this. And it's like they want chaos.
And the ways in which populations are destabilized over and over again, it's a playbook, and it works a treat. And one of the things that happens is that people are encouraged to think that everything that they hold dear is actually suboptimal, to put it mildly. That their national identity is questionable, that their history is shameful. They bring it closer to home and suggest that the things that your parents believe are contemptible. They deracinate people. They cut people away from their roots. People become anywheres. They're persuaded that they don't belong anywhere, and therefore they could be moved anywhere. And this is done by every mass movement, every ideology, fascism, communism, Nazism. They all do the same things. They make people feel worthless. They make them feel as if they come from somewhere worthless. We've got this fiasco at the moment where the Conservative Party, as part of its electioneering for the coming general election, is promising the return of national service. Right? It's promising that kids will go into either working voluntary in the community or going into the army or going into the military. Right? They're pushing national service at a time after a generational attempt to discourage kids from Britain of being proud of Britain at all. The kids have been being told for a generation at least that Britain's history is only shameful, imperialist, colonial, and all of the rest of it. And so you say, serve which nation exactly? Because you've been telling these kids that are coming of age now, that their nation is shameful, and that there are so many things that they should be ashamed of individually and collectively. And you look at what's happening to our veterans. I'm sure it's the same in the States. We've got veterans living on the streets, homeless, disregarded, post-traumatic stress disorder, and all of the rest of it. That's how they treat the full-time professional military in this country. And they're saying to kids, wouldn't it be great if you gave a year of your life to serving the military and be proud of your flag? We've got a situation at the moment where if you were to fly the Union Jack from a flagpole in your back garden, you're eminently likely to get a knock on your door, and it would be a policeman saying that the neighbours had reported you for a hate crime by flying the national flag. And then on parallel tracks, they're saying, national service, serve your country. Which country? Whose country? I thought I was supposed to be ashamed of the place. And now you want my kids to go and give 12 months of their life and possibly serve what? And is that just the on-ramp to conscription? Are you just going to eventually find a reason to push them towards the meat grinder in Ukraine or similar? There's no joined up thinking to it at all. And the extent to which these people seem to think that all of us are too blind to see it is frankly insulting. So
I don't know if you know about this story. So a little while ago, there was a stabbing. They killed 3 kids. This is in the UK. What we know about the mass stabbing at Children's Taylor Swift workshop in Southport. And so this was back from January 2025, right? And then this woman's heard about that story, the stabbing, which they blamed on an immigrant, and she tweeted out something negative that they said incited violence. She made a tweet, and now she's in jail for 2.5 years.
Was this in UK?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I did hear about this.
You heard about this. That's Lucy Connolly was jailed for posting an online rant about migrants on the day of the Southport murder. And so she just lost her appeal.
Yeah.
She was jailed in October last year for the 29 July post that said, "So mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bastards for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it." So she got sentenced to 2.5 years for a tweet.
Yeah.
She, by the way, she took it down right away. So the tweet went up. It got maybe 300,000 views, not likes, views. And then she took it down.
Yeah.
And why do I bring this up? I bring this up because another guy who said something worse just got no sentence at all. Labor Counselor Ricky Jones found not guilty of inciting violent disorder after calling for right-wing protesters to have their throats cut.
Right.
So this woman said, burn their hotels down, I don't care, in a tweet, and then took it down, goes to jail for 2.5 years for a tweet.
Right.
This guy says, well,
they are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to hold their throats and get rid of them all.
They are disgusting Nazi bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them now.
Was talking about Ukraine, because he'll be in jail if it's talking about Ukraine. Those Nazis.
So,
and Tommy Robinson, the Mossad agent, is the one telling us this. How about that?
How about that? So, Labor Counselor Ricky Jones found not guilty. You heard what he said.
They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to hold their throats and get rid of them all. I just want to say thank you all. I'm going to leave it now. And free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Thank you. God bless you.
So
you're not allowed to say that now. Tommy Robinson wanted to have this up because he works for Mossad. That's what they want to attach So this guy said we should slit right-wingers' throats. Then Tommy made sure to include the Free Palestine part. Free Palestine, to link that up with the Muslims that are killing people in England. Can't wait to link that up. So we get back to our early 2000s real enemy of Islam. Yeah.
And so someone tweeted this out underneath it, showing this guy posted racist comment on Facebook. He got 15 weeks in prison. That's Sean Tuck. This guy sold anti-immigration stickers. He got 24 months in prison. And then they show this guy, they claim he AR'd a 12-year-old girl, and he got 180 hours of community service, no prison
That was
time.
closest to the IDF's behavior, so that's why they went light on him.
Aha!
So rile you up at the Muslims. This is an op that's going on for a while. First of all, they're purposely bringing in people from the countries they blew up who might have a bit of a grudge against the people there. You think it's not on purpose? Because they want those fights, just like when they corralled Kyle Rittenhouse into the BLM protests. Remember that?
Yep.
This is all on purpose. Chaos is control. Chaos is control. You control the prison by making little racial gangs that get in fights, and by being really unfair to one side to rile up the other.
Well, but don't. That is kind of wild that guy can say that in a speech, inciting violence to people. Nothing happens to him. That woman makes a tweet that she took down. Very soon after she made the tweet, she took it down, and she's in prison for 2 years, for over a year already. But I think her sentence is 2.5 years. And
people are in there for years. For the last 4 years, 4,000 people for tweets, for just tweets in England.
I don't know anything, but I think that lady probably should have put like "M Hi Israel" at the end of her tweet. Would have probably saved her ass.
I was in the UK trying to get in trouble, saying all kinds of stuff about Israel and not Zionists and Netanyahu, and
you're an immigrant, so they're going to let you could kill someone with a machete and they're not going to do nothing. But if the citizen tweets, they're going to prison. They're breaking rocks.
Keir Starmer complained about the open borders experiment that was perpetrated on the people of Britain. He complained. That's what his words. That's the Prime Minister of the UK said this, that the people of Britain deserve an answer of why they were made the victims of an open borders experiment. Well, I think certainly one of the reasons is to drive down wages, but second, in the United States, and second is to keep people fighting amongst each other.
If you went to a good school, you'd know that already. You'd read Hobbes' Leviathan. The real wealthy kids that go to real school, they read Caesar's Treaty on the Punic Wars and Hobbes' Leviathan, and that's what teaches young power elite how to rule the rabble. You divide them by racial and ethnic nonsense forever.
It is funny how they talk about, the end of democracy and we got to defend democracy. Meanwhile, the UK and almost all of Europe, they're locking up people for speech, for tweet. They're locking them up.
China is more free.
China's more
than
free.
Europe, for sure. I can promise you that. I've been there. You can say whatever you want about other races there, and you could smoke indoors. You just can't talk bad about the government. In England, you can't talk bad about the government. You can't talk bad about Muslims or Israel. Whatever side you're on, you better shut your mouth.
We saw that 60 Minutes segment where they were in Germany. They were saying you can't insult a politician, and they will arrest you for insulting a politician.
Mass immigration, also known as the UN Replacement Migration Agenda, is a decades-long plan, and the aim of the plan is in the name: replacement. Governments and media have long demonized anyone who dares to say it how it is, that the identity of the national people across the West is being replaced with third world, often savagely violent migrants who do not share the values of the people of that nation. And the trend is the same across the West. The migrants flood in, whether legally or illegally, commit heinous crimes. The government goes light on those criminals, often releasing them back into the community, whilst simultaneously slandering and even punishing the citizens of those countries who voice their concerns, protest against this ripping apart of their nations, or display any sign of nationalism or desire to preserve the integrity of their countries. But that tide is shifting. We are seeing a prolonged campaign of anti-immigration protests in the UK. Over the weekend, tens of thousands of Australians gathered for the same purpose, and Japan is also joining the battle. Take a look. Now, a lesser known fact about what's happening in Japan, which, by the way, that footage took a lot of people by surprise, garnering millions of views on social media. People just weren't aware that Japan was having the same issues. Migrant protests shake Japan after country sets up hometowns for African partners. Take a listen to this. Migrant protests have erupted in Japan after hometowns for 4 African countries were set up in Japanese cities. Controversy was sparked last week after authorities announced a new initiative under the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, who describes its goal as creating a, quote, peaceful and prosperous world where people can hope for a better future and explore their diverse potentials. At the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, JICA announced the rollout of an African hometown initiative, which declared 4 hometowns in Japanese cities for Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Officials in the city of Imabari, the site of the new hometown for Mozambique, revealed to public broadcaster NHK that they've received thousands of phone calls and emails of concern about the program. Similarly, in Australia, over the weekend, protests broke out across capital cities, protesting the mass immigration policies of the current government. Now, many employees of the Australian government have, of course, condemned the protesters, calling them all Nazis and slapping various other labels on concerned Australians who are sick and tired of lawlessness on their streets. As we reported to you recently, there have been a string of violent machete crimes by migrants, and in response, the government has cracked down on law-abiding citizens owning any weapons to be able to defend themselves, and also banned knives and put out machete disposal bins so that the criminals, who will apparently come to the realization that attacking someone with a machete is in fact frowned upon, have somewhere to safely return the weapons they're using to terrorize Australians. We're talking literally a bin with a slot around about the size of a machete. Just the other day, a Pakistani student who killed a disabled grandma in a crash in Australia was spared jail after a court heard she wants to sponsor her family to migrate to Australia. Quote, "I do not consider the present matter ought to negatively affect your career and migration goals," the magistrate said. And just like Japan, it's been revealed now that the Australian government is planning a whole bunch of new housing, likely for foreigners, in the middle of a housing crisis. No doubt this housing will be for foreigners, or at bare minimum to satisfy the housing demand put on the country by this massive influx of immigrants, as more and more Australians are sleeping in tents due to the lack of housing. Sometimes these tents or trailers or caravans may be on a parent's or relative's property, so the government made that illegal too. Better to have Australians on the streets than allow them to stay in a caravan or trailer on an acreage, the government says. So naturally, this issue affects a broad range of Australians. Over the weekend, people from all walks of life, as you saw in those videos, attended the protests across the capital cities. And some of those people were immigrants themselves who came to the country with the desire to assimilate and can see the hordes coming in now do not have that desire. Some of them were veterans. Some of them were everyday Aussie families. And an extremely small percentage of those people were, quote, self-proclaimed Nazis. So, of course, the government is focusing, and even some of these so-called dissident media spent their time focusing, on the small group rather than the tens and tens of thousands of people that attended that were united in their demands and mass immigration. Opposition leader Susan Ley is one of those people who is not making any sense at all. She said Australia's way of life is built on respect, on community, and on the belief that every person deserves to feel safe, valued, and at home here. We are a migrant nation. Our strength has been forged by generations of people who chose this country, worked hard, and came together around the values of fairness, tolerance, respect, and reward for effort. Listen to this pivot here. That strength is now being tested. Since Hamas's barbarism on October 7th, new pressures have been placed on our social cohesion, and there have been multiple failures of government. So she then says basically that these protests are happening because of Hamas? So Australian families are living on the streets. They can't afford their groceries. They're being attacked in public and in their homes by savages with machetes. The government continues to let immigrant criminals off the hook so as to not impede their migration goals. And the government is blaming Hamas. And to top it off, the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns is going to investigate to see if any of these Aussie patriots are guilty of hate speech. Take a listen.
Having spoken to the police this morning, they're investigating, as they would in all circumstances, the speeches that were made. Yes, you've got a right to free speech, yes, but other people have got a right to be free from racism and vilification in our modern society, and we've got a duty to protect that.
Now, Australia is an example of a worldwide crisis of mass immigration, and the government cracking down on the established citizens while protecting the feelings of the machete killers, we guess. These people who are running the country quite literally have no idea what they're doing. Their solution to the housing and economic crisis is to bring more skilled immigrants in, thus exacerbating the very issue they claim to be working towards solving. And in response to those who protest and say this is unsustainable, lock them up for hate speech or blame Hamas or Nazis. Take your pick of any scapegoat available rather than too many migrants and no assimilation. Immigration affects many facets of society. It will affect economic factors, obviously housing, as we've discussed, job opportunities, and not to mention the safety of the citizens. Many people from other countries simply do not share traditional Western values, which is the key here. The reason these governments are retaliating towards the people is because they clearly have a desire to dismantle traditional Western values. What we are witnessing here is quite literally the decline of Western civilization worldwide. This could be seen as nothing less than intentional at this point. The people need to make their voices heard, not allow distractions from the message, and force politicians to bend to the will of the people.